And now, it's time for Aviation News with Angela.
Greetings everyone. And welcome to Aviation News with me, Angela. After a weekend of mourning, a short using I Will Remember You by Sarah McLachlan, and a candlelight vigil using all Darren and Kyle's families and all the characters from Llama Llama, Go Dog Go, Chip and Potato, and Sonic the Hedgehog for Spirit Airlines. Lizzie, on the other hand, never has to work for that trashy airline ever again, and so are her sisters, Kayla and Tracy. I was supposed to apply for Spirit, but it never happened because I never want to work for Spirit anyway. Anyways, this series is always sponsored by your friends at Oakland San Francisco Bay Airport, and, in fact, I'm one of them. With news articles like airlines fill Spirit-sized gaps, Frontier's record revenue, among others, we have a lot to cover tonight. So let's get rolling. First, we go to JetBlue grows Fort Lauderdale in Spirit's absence. Part 1 of finding the new normal. One person's trash is another's, well, you know. And in that vein, JetBlue Airways, now Fort Lauderdale's dominant carrier by a wide margin with Spirit's demise, is already adding 11 new destinations to replace the yellow airplane-shaped hole in FLL's departure board. 6 of the cities are new, or returning, to the JetBlue family. Barranquilla, Colombia, one-time daily begins October 1st. Baltimore, Maryland, 3 times daily begins July 9th. Cali, Colombia, one-time daily begins October 15th. Charlotte, North Carolina, 3 times daily begins July 9th. Columbus, Ohio, one-time daily begins November 2nd. And Indianapolis, Indiana, one-time daily begins November 2nd. And 5 are already served from elsewhere but are now adding service to Fort Lauderdale. All of these will begin July 9th. Chicago O'Hare, Illinois, 2 times daily. Detroit, Michigan, 2 times daily. Houston Intercontinental, Texas, 3 times daily. Nashville, Tennessee, 3 times daily. And Ponce, Puerto Rico, 1 time daily. In addition to these new cities, the airline is also beefing up service from FLL to Austin, Texas, Aguadilla, Puerto Rico, Dallas-Fort Worth, Texas, Raleigh-Durham, North Carolina, Santiago de los Caballeros in the Dominican Republic, and Santo Domingo also in the Dominican Republic. To make Spirit customers feel at home on these flights, JetBlue will provide complimentary buzzballs to anyone who shows up in a tube top or ripped t-shirt, and also to anyone who removes their shoes and socks during the flight. Could Latrobe's Arnold Palmer Regional Airport be next in line? Next, Frontier's Q1 is a familiar refrain. Record gross revenue, but a big net loss for the quarter. Stop us if you've heard this story before. Because Frontier is joining the club of US carriers setting records for Q1 revenue but still ending up with a net loss which they can conveniently blame on high fuel prices. The carrier reported gross revenue just shy of $1 billion, but with a net loss of $272 million, which comes out to $1.18 per diluted share. Frontier operated 1% less capacity than in Q1 25, but it jumped revenue by 17%. Unit revenue rose from 9.17 cents to 10.8 cents, and stage length adjusted to 1,000 miles it also jumped from 8.81 cents to 10.29 cents. Fuel, unsurprisingly, was a problem. Fuel expenses for Frontier were $268 million, a figure that accounts for its net loss almost entirely on its own. Until Frontier figures out how to have its airplanes powered by the animals on its tails, a particularly challenging issue for Tico the two-toed sloth, that will remain a problem. Looking forward, Frontier's Q2 outlook isn't rosy as it tries to right the ship. It expects to grow capacity 6 to 8% in the quarter but with another net loss. Its liquidity at the end of the quarter totaled $974 million, but it expects that to drop as low as $900 million following Q2. Now we have Breeze Ads 11, Part 2 of Finding the New Normal. Another place Spirit's demise has left a gaping hole is Atlantic City, where thousands of travelers desperately want to leave regularly. But fear not, Jersey boys and girls, because Breeze is planning to blow in and be the first to fill the void. Breeze will take over 4 routes vacated by Spirit from ACY to include Orlando, daily, begins July 3rd. Fort Myers, 3 3 times weekly service begins October 22nd. Myrtle Beach, 2 times weekly begins October 22nd. West Palm Beach, 3 times weekly service begins December 17th. But wait, that's not all. Breeze is adding 7 more routes to sun destinations, including its first service to St. Thomas in the U.S. Virgin Islands. New service for Breeze. Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania to Cancun, Mexico and Punta Cana in the Dominican Republic, 3 times weekly seasonal service begins January 7th on both. Columbus, Ohio to Punta Cana in the Dominican Republic, 2 times weekly seasonal service begins January 8th. Richmond, Virginia to Cancun, Mexico, 2 times weekly seasonal service begins January 8th. Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania to Vero Beach, Florida, 3 times weekly begins October 1st. Tampa, Florida to St. Thomas in the U.S. Virgin Islands, 2 times weekly begins December 16th. And even Tampa, Florida to Cancun, Mexico, 2 times weekly begins December 19th. Southwest is joining the backfilling game too, adding in Las Vegas, Nevada and Orlando, Florida. Both cities will see new routes, 26 from Los, 23 from MCO, and 4 new routes from Las Vegas, Nevada, Boston, Massachusetts, Knoxville, Tennessee, Miami, Florida, and Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Care to give them a test run once they all launch on the dates mentioned? Next up is DOT, Mexican government get closer to ending RIF. Awful, but they need to play nice, and that's the end of it. The rift between the US and Mexico over access to Mexico City airports is moving closer towards a resolution. The two governments released statements saying that they have reached a consensus of a path forward to come into compliance with the 2015 US-Mexico Air Transport Agreement, which, no offense fellas, but this sounds more like a plan to figure out a plan. Most notably, US restrictions on Mexican carriers accessing US airports will remain in place for now. The DOT says while this is a positive step forward, there's still a ways to go. The Mexican side got what it wanted, which was acknowledgement from the US that Mexico City/AIFA exists, and is a part of both Mexico and Mexico City's airport system. According to Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy, the spat started when he says Mexico illegal canceled and froze US carrier flights for 3 years without consequences. The Mexican government says these were established to ensure equitable and transparent access to airport infrastructure, expanding operational options, and strengthening logistics connectivity. But we think there's only one way this ends. Duffy at AIFA in a sombrero for a ribbon-cutting ceremony of some sort. What an angry bird. And finally we have BA doubles down on the worst idea ever. Awful. We've got one place left where we don't have to listen to people yammer on their phone to their mother-in-law, to Kathy from accounting, or circling back to take it offline on a Zoom call. But that last bastion of sanity might be going away as British Airways is doubling down on its decision to allow voice calls and video calls on Starlink-equipped planes to now allow it on all planes, regardless of the internet service installed. Perhaps the best part are BA's guidelines, specifically for voice calls. If you're making a call, keep your voice low and use headphones. Okay, good luck with that. In BA's defense, part of its reasoning does make sense, in that it says it's happening anyway and it's creating onboard conflicts with passengers and cabin staff. The hope seems to be that if everyone can do it, people will self-police obnoxious behavior, and that'll end well because it always does. The question now is, when do we get the earphone back? And now, something interesting, with Carolina Ramirez, called Aviation Odds and Ends.
Air Transat is headed to the grandest of the Canary Islands, and it's adding a new route to Panama. Air Zimbabwe has some issues. AirAsia ordered 150 A220s. Alaska is adding 4 West Coast routes including a glorious return to Long Beach after 11 years, Seattle to Long Beach and Santa Rosa to Boise, Phoenix, and Salt Lake City. ANA will retire its final B777-300, the non-ER version, by March. Contour will begin 4x weekly service from Denver to Ruidoso, New Mexico. Egypt Air received its first B737 MAX. Emirates reported record revenue. ITA will return to Tripoli late this summer. JAL issues bond-type shares to raise more than $1 billion. Jin Air is adding 5 A321s. Lufthansa Group posted a Q1 loss, so at least some things never change. Riyadh Air looking for approval to operate to the US. TAP is expecting a binding offer for a minority stake in the carrier from Lufthansa. Scoot is ordering airplanes from Airbus, but not as many as Air Asia. Southwest is looking into hiring some mechanics from Spirit. And for you, Angela, it's part 3 of finding the new normal. Now back to you.
Thank you, Carolina. Here are a couple people have to say about Spirit Airlines before we end here.
Spirit Airlines was my go-to for special concerts and meetups. It's a total shame that it had to go away, breaking Angus Scattergood's heart and causing Bodhi to get more crazier than usual.
Spirit Airlines was my favorite airline for vacations to Florida, Vegas, and other good weather destinations. But in the summer, Vegas gets too hot, leaving me to melt. It's a shame I wouldn't see this airline ever again. Hopefully Calculator from Object Mayhem would reveal the name of the new airline at Ronald E. McNair Regional Airport's air in the airport reception on Monday.
Thank you Kade and Alex for giving me condolences to this beautiful airline we all fly. It's a shame that it's gone now. And that's that. Hopefully after we go door knocking for candidate voting, Calculator from Object Mayhem will send me the email for the new airline in which the name will be revealed on Monday, so be on the lookout. My moment of levity says, my current password for my email is Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. The instructions from IT said a minimum of 8 characters. If you haven't watched both rounds of Mourning, the Goodbye Short, and the Candlelight Vigil for Spirit Airlines, you should do so at this time. Anyways, this is Angela, signing off. Goodbye for now.